giving, David. Well done.
Hi, welcome everyone. We are here today to talk a little bit about how you can leverage design thinking methodology to think about designing the career track and path that you want to have. So I'm joined today. My name, I should say, is Kelsey Otero. I work at Marquette University, so I spend a lot of my time helping students on our campus think about a career track and a career path in social innovation. One of the common things, though, that I have observed over the years is that there isn't one track that is ever the same. And this idea of zigging and zagging throughout your career is incredibly normal as you continue to leverage this design thinking methodology and experience. The design thinking process that we'll talk more about today is very iterative. It's constantly changing and in motion. And that's something that you'll see represented in some of the themes from our three guests that are joining us today. So to kick us off, I'm going to have them each introduce themselves and share with you all a little bit about what they're currently doing and working on as a way to kind of illuminate all of the different paths that your own journeys could take. So Jeff, I'll start with you. If you want to introduce yourself and share and just highlight some of the amazing things you have done so far in your career.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. So pleased you can join us, and especially excited to hear from Stephanie and Lasayo and follow Kelsey's lead in putting this workshop together. It's a really interesting question, not to go long on it, but I do feel like that I'm embodying the phrase that God loves fools and children, and I'm in my middle 50s and only leaves one option. And I just been extraordinarily fortunate and blessed to kind of meet the right people, which I think is key in terms of learning from people that you admire, whom you hold in high esteem, and then starting to build your social network, your social capital around that, because birds of a feather do indeed flock together. And I think if you missed David Bornstein's remarks just over the last hour, please go back and check them out. But that's a good example for me about somebody I met too many years ago, and the friendship is beautiful and it changed my life, and it's all about who you choose to hang with and learn from, and then life's journey sort of fills in the blanks accordingly. So whether it's advisor to the president at a Midwest university, advisor to dean and a vice provost at a second Midwest university, yes, running my own organizations, and then more importantly, falling in love with people that are solutions minded and less content to be managing the problem and more passionate about finding solutions or hitting upon innovative ways to solve problems, getting at the root causes, et cetera. So that journey for me, from the nonprofit, in some cases in the for-profit sector, university administration and teaching, and then even in philanthropy as well. To me, it's certainly logical that I'm doing what I'm doing now because it really is an expression of the last 20, 25 years and the things that I've realized are most important to me. So how you get to navigate that in your own journeys, hopefully at a much younger starting point, is part of the reason we're together today. And it'd be a pleasure to share some insights with you on how to go about doing that successfully. So thank you. And then would you like me to introduce why don't we do Stephanie and then Lasayo? That's the order I'm actually seeing on my side on the screen. So I had the pleasure of meeting Stephanie at UW-Madison. This was part of the teaching experience. I had the pleasure of being engaged with and teaching social entrepreneurship. And if there are instructors, educators that are viewing this, you know what I mean when I say there are always a few that stand out. Stephanie's one of those. And you can build culture in a classroom, whether it's online, and certainly in person, around a learner who is eager and just does extraordinary work. And then if you're really smart, you look for ways to keep them engaged. So I really appreciate Stephanie availing herself to this invitation. Same is true of Lasayo, but I'll pause there and ask Stephanie if she wants to offer some self-introduction as well. So go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie. So I have a BBA in marketing from UW-Madison. After graduating, I worked a few different jobs in different areas, but primarily have worked in front of house service design in the restaurant industry. And I loved it, and I still do love it, but I kind of was doing it for a while and felt like that there was a little bit more to life besides that. So I actually decided to start volunteering for Literacy Network in Madison, and then I became a class leader, and then I'm now on the development and marketing committee. And long story short, I thought I was just going to volunteer and help others, but I actually became super inspired by the adult learners I was working with. And they truly inspired me and compelled me to explore my love of continuous learning further. And that's kind of what led me to where I am now. And I'm in grad school at UW-Madison, and I'll be earning my Master of Science in Design and Innovation this May. And I'm also currently doing a social entrepreneurship internship with Represented Collective, which is an initiative focused on fostering STEM skills in girls and kids of color.
Neat. Thanks, Stephanie. And Lasayo is similarly just another outstanding student that I had the pleasure of coming to know here at UW-Madison. And Lasayo, I don't mean to embarrass you, but congratulations on being selected as the class commencement speaker, as the latest indication of the successful path you're on. And I think there's going to be more accolades, but I won't give things away. But I hope in the weeks ahead you hear some really good news about some other awards that you're considered as a finalist for us. But Lasayo, please give us your self-introduction.
Yes, thank you for that, Jeff. Yeah, my name is Lasayo Mwakatika. I'm from Malawi, which is a country in the southern part of Africa, and came here in 2017, knew nothing about Wisconsin. I came here because I was tricked by the pictures of the summer. You know, I was looking at different schools in the US, beautiful campuses, and UW showed up, and there were like some cute pictures of the summer. I was like, yeah, I want to go there and stuff. But I was looking into studying agriculture, and because Malawi is a very big agricultural country, and I wanted to provide maybe a solution in the agriculture sector and contribute somehow, because a lot of youth in Malawi are not hugely engaged in the agriculture sector. So UW seemed to have a really good program in the agribusiness management. So I chose to study agriculture business here at UW. And throughout, I've tried to find a way to connect my passion about agriculture and my country and the people that I've met at UW, and trying to see a way in which I could be of help in these both communities. And that has brought out different things that I didn't even expect. I just really was curious and passionate about that. And I was able to take on a student organization called Project Malawi on campus that we fundraise for different organizations on campus and in different organizations in Malawi. And so far we are fundraising for ARCADES, which is a local organization in Malawi that gives loans to young people and also teaches them agriculture skills and mentors them as well. But it also helps in finding markets for them as well. So we've been fundraising for them for about 2 years now. And we actually just launched an internship program whereby would have UW students intern with that organization. And I ended up also accepting a job offer with them. They're looking into turning their loan program into a microfinance, and I'll be heading that microfinance going forward, because we want to make our solution about capital more sustainable in Malawi. So that's mainly what I'll be doing after I graduate. But throughout Madison, throughout my career at Madison, I think that passion of trying to connect agriculture and my country and find a solution to some of the things that I've seen as a problem has made me curious, and made me take Jeff's class, which was a really great class about social entrepreneurship. And I learned a lot and kept in contact with Jeff, who has helped me a lot until so far to make sure that I'm having some clarity on the things that I'm pursuing, especially on the microfinance going forward. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Great. Both of you embody why it's so fun, back to birds of a feather and just coming alongside you in your journey and playing a small role to help equip you for success. So thanks for making time. Go ahead, Kelsey.
I was just going to say, you two are just amazing examples of, I think, what the power of young people to change the world when they find out and figure out what they're really passionate about. So I'm so excited to tease out a little bit more of this with both of you today as we, go through some questions that kind of helped you maybe figure out some of the areas that you were passionate about. But before we start talking about that and design thinking, I think it's really important to just reframe this notion of work. We're taught growing up that we should, and how many of you guys have had adults ask you, and I'm guilty of this too, of asking students and people I know, what do you want to do when you grow up? Where do you want to work? And we really limit our thinking about what we can do and what we can be by leveraging those types of frameworks. And so I want to encourage you all to reframe your thinking and settle on more of a stance of what problems do you want to solve? What issues are you passionate about? You heard both Stephanie and Lasayo talk a little bit about that, and Jeff as well. And as their careers have evolved, they have changed the notion of what do they want to do, knowing that there's so many different ways to use their talents. You could start an organization, you could jump into a leadership role within an existing organization, you could be an advocate, a convener. But the priority that we should be asking ourselves is, what problems do we want to solve? What keeps us up at night? What do we care about? And that reframing will set us up to be successful when we're thinking about designing a career, and a career specifically with impact that we want to have when we quote unquote grow up. Though, as Jeff just illuminated, I think we are in many ways evergreen people and always young at heart. In the spirit of continuing this reframing discussion, I wanted to give you guys a model called Igikaki to think about, these are great questions and things to think about in order to identify your North Star. What is that center that is grounding you? What is that intersection between those issues that you are passionate about, the things that you are good at and what you want to do in your profession or your vocation? And what is your mission or calling? What are the problems that the world needs help solving that you are adequately equipped to do and to work on? We had this idea growing up, and many of us, because this is the examples that we have in front of us, that work is not supposed to be enjoyable. It's a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, live for the weekend type of mentality. And I think younger generations, students who are in college now are really starting to say, we need to shake that up. We need to reframe what we think about the notion of work being, because this is a long-term career endeavor that we are getting into. And work should be something that is hard potentially, but something that we enjoy and we find purpose in doing. Because if we can bring our best self to the work, so many other people benefit. There is a huge ripple effect that can be present when that does happen. So the American workplace is probably slightly broken in terms of the this notion of work. So many Americans are reported as being unhappy at work. They feel less than engaged and often want to quit their jobs because of a lack of appreciation. I was meeting with a former student yesterday who definitely fell into this category. And, she's on this journey and search right now to figure out what her purpose is. But I do want to offer some hope. I know that this sounds really bleak, but part of the reason we're having this session today is to say, well, are there tools, are there resources, are there reflection questions that you can be asking yourself so that you are thinking about this earlier on and have questions and a framework to go back to when you are feeling stuck, so that you are using your skills and talents in the best way possible. And that brings us to this notion of purpose. And that makes us think, is purpose actually valuable within the workplace? Do people care about that? Or is that just a nice thought, something that is an idealist perspective? And I want to offer a counterexample to that, and a lot of research that has come out lately is saying that purpose is what will keep especially young people, millennials and Gen Zers, committed, happy, and at an organization. And that ability to retain and keep people in an organization allows the impact that they can have to multiply. Organizations themselves are noting that, individuals who feel connected to the organization's mission are, more willing to stay longer and are more connected and are positively contributing to the revenue and long-term sustainability of that organization. And so I want to encourage you, as you are thinking about designing what your career looks like, to think about, is it rooted in a place of purpose? And that purpose is going to be totally different for everyone. We have 4 different people on this call leading the session and chiming in today. And I think we all would say that we have a very, very different purpose and calling. But being able to identify that, I see Lasayo nodding, is what is going to allow us to have the most impact and help the most people. And that's a really, really powerful thing that I hope more people think about and build into their career. So before we get into the toolkit, I just want to, reiterate what Stephanie and Lasayo and Jeff said, that you have agency to create and design your own unique path. There's 4 different paths on here. There are hundreds and thousands more of people who are out there that you know. And our job today is to give you some inspiration and some tools to think about because this is an evolving, iterative process that you will go to as you figure out what the best career path is for you in your life. So let's try it. We're gonna run you through a couple of exercises, give you some tools that you can think about in your own life, in school, and in your career, how you can start to tackle this really big problem of what problems am I supposed to solve, and ultimately then what am I doing with my life? So to do that, we're going to use what is often referred to as a design thinking methodology. Design thinking has been used by some major large organizations. And I know this might, what's up on the screen might seem really complex. So we're going to break it down into chunks so that you feel like you are equipped to continue to use this evolving process. And design thinking at the end of the day is a methodology or a process that was created for prioritizing the consumer's need and making sure that we elevate the voice of the consumer in designing an end solution. And in this case, you all are the customer. You are the core that we need to keep in mind. Design thinking is incredibly helpful when we think about solving big, large, wicked, scary problems. And I can't think of a better example than to apply this to thinking about designing what that could or should look like for our own lives and careers. So to kind of start us out, we are going to choose a problem area. Design thinking and this methodology that we're going to present and share today can be used to solve any sorts of problems. Today, we're going to focus on prioritizing our own careers and career paths and tracks. After that, the next stage is to do user research. And so that's where we're going to jump in next and do a little bit of research. For this, the research often starts with some self-reflection. So thinking about the head and the heart and the tension that sometimes exists between both of those. So for heart, think about, what your interests are, what issues, ideas, people and things that move you, what keeps you up at night, what are the things that you want to talk about, read more about, that you're really curious about. And then when we think about the head, self-reflection, that's where we're thinking about our strengths, our innate abilities, skills, things that people may have told us we're really good at, or things that come naturally or easy to us. And this is a great place when you're really stuck about what should my life look like, to think about doing some self-reflection. And so we're going to start with the heart mapping. And I'm going to ask Lasayo and Stephanie and Jeff, if you're interested, to unmute and talk a little bit about any one of these questions on here and how you kind of approached thinking about what made you come alive, what energized you. And Lasayo, I think for you in particular, what kind of made your heart hurt a little bit that you were like, I can't let this go. There's something here that I feel really compelled to explore more.
Yeah, I think for me, it's it happened. I would say it's kind of like a small story, but it happened when I was I was taking a gap year after high school, and I was attending all these career events and stuff. And there was a guy who was presenting about the agricultural challenges in Malawi and how, our country about 60% of the youth were unemployed, and like by unemployment by broader definition, and how that is not sustainable for a country like Malawi, and how there was all these opportunities in the agriculture sector, but Malawi was still importing things like tomatoes and onions from South Africa, which is a bigger economy and stuff. So that really made me angry. I was like, there is an opportunity here, and no one seems like to pay attention and try to solve this problem, because we're looking at all the developing countries, because I've been interested in agriculture for a long time before then, and I was looking at all the countries in the West that have even made it. Most of the countries, even the US, had worked on the agriculture sector first. They have a lot of farmers program that helped in building the farmers that right now, we don't really worry about how to produce food and stuff, because there's a lot of innovation and thinking that went into that in the previous year. So I was looking at my country, Malawi, which is a very small country, but we rely on agriculture, and yet we weren't still developing in the agriculture sector, and most of the youth were not coming in the agriculture sector. So when I sat down and I was looking at that problem, it almost made me angry, and it was hurting for me that how can people not be doing something about this? So that's why I was like, you know what, I think I want to do something about this, and let's see if I can be able to position myself to find a solution. And for me to do that, I think was, I had always been fascinated about business, and how, because I like talking to people, I like exchanging ideas with people, and I like building relationships with people. And for me, I thought business would be the best way to do that, because I believe in business being a win-win situation, not that you rip someone off and you make more profit on some people. I feel like business for me, it's a place whereby, I want something you have, and you want something I have, and we exchange, and everyone is happy at the end of the day. So I wanted even to check, like, that was even one part of the business I was thinking, because I had taken some business courses, and the way people were thinking about business was like, I don't think this is the right way to think about this. So coupling my interest in business and then agriculture, that's when I was like, you know what, I think if I study agriculture business, that would be a better way for me to look at this problem and see a way in which I can find myself in a position whereby I could even try to look at finding a solution to this problem. So yeah, I think so. Just getting exposed to the problem and getting proximal to the problem, and because I grew up in the rural part of Malawi, and I knew how farmers were suffering, and how people lying on agriculture. I even had some of my friends drop out of school, and they were very smart, and because they had to go to the farm because their families were not producing enough and having enough school fees to feed their kids. So I think that was being proximal to the problem, and just digging deep into the problem and seeing that there's a solution that could be done, just that people are not maybe thinking about it enough, really made my heart hurt. And I was like, I think I need to do something about this. So, yeah.
And Stephanie, I know you mentioned in your introduction that you discovered this love you have of continuous learning. And I would love to hear if there was an aha moment where you knew, like, okay, there's something else out there that I want to explore that encouraged you to go back to grad school.
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit. So I had been working in my field for quite a long time, and I liked it, but then it was starting to get a little bit stagnant feeling. And I'm the type of person that needs to feel really inspired by the work I'm doing and the life that I'm living in order to feel like I am providing the maximum, like the best I can give out into the world. So like I said, when I went to Literacy Network, I was so inspired by the adult learners, because these were people that were working full-time jobs, taking the bus to just learn English for 1 hour a day. And they took so much time and effort to do something that they found so important to them. And that just really inspired me to really take a look at where I was at in my life and where I wanted to go. And then I happened to see an opportunity for the Design and Innovation program at UW-Madison. And then that made me realize that in order to expand my reach and be able to help others, which is something that is really important to me, trying to help people find the opportunities to live better lives. And then I realized that by doing this program, I'd be able to learn more and be able to share my knowledge with more and more people.
I love that. Thank you both for sharing. And I want to encourage you guys to think about how these are questions you can continue to think about and maybe talk about with other friends and family. Sometimes it's helpful to have sounding boards and advisors or other people that you can connect with, because these are really heavy, complex topic areas that you have to move through as you're doing your user research on yourself. So we also have head mapping. So we're shifting a little bit away from thinking about just what's tugging at our heartstrings and thinking about where our strengths lie. And Lasayo, I heard you say business. You knew that from taking a couple of classes, you felt confident in the knowledge you had gained and knew that this was definitely an area for you to pursue. One of the best ways to think about head mapping sometimes, because I think it can be easy to be humble and not think, it's hard sometimes to think about what am I good at and really put that out there. So sometimes it's helpful when you get to a head mapping exercise to actually talk to a friend, parents, and ask other people for their thoughts. What are things that you think I'm really good at? Pay attention to activities that your friends ask you or family members ask you for help on. Are there certain skill sets where you are the go-to person? There's a theory and principle out there that we should lean more into our strengths. So oftentimes we're taught growing up, if you're not good at math, you darn it, you need to work on math. And I think as we get older and become adults, we need to shift our thinking away from saying, not that if we're not good at anything, we just should never try again. But it might make more sense to invest more of our time and energy in the things that we're good at, that we're naturally good at, like doing, and want to continue to work at. So think about what your strengths are. What value do you add that you can continue to amplify? Another, I have friends from the program, the Commons, and they always use this, or they used to use this phrasing, the hustler, handler, hacker, or hipster, as a way to categorize and think about the skills that you might bring to different situations. So are you the hustler, the go, I'm going to just get things done, let's problem solve? Are you the handler? Are you the type of person that's organized, keeps the group on track, sets the meeting, likes to do the planning? Are you the hacker and you're maybe a real techie person? You like solving problems, tinkering, digging in deep, and you get really satisfied when you solve something that seems really complex? Or are you the hipster, the one that, is always knows the next trend that's coming, what's ahead? You're staying on point with talking to customers and knowing what the voice of the customer is asking of the organization to deliver. So I want to offer that as another potential framework to think about in group settings, group projects. Is there a role you typically find yourself playing and gravitating towards, or is there a role you'd like to play more that you could maybe think about how you can contribute in a group project or a team setting in the future to be able to develop those as a skill or a strength? Once you've done some head and heart mapping, the next step is to kind of synthesize all of that. And if we were all together in person, I would have you guys probably pair up and share some things with a buddy. Ask a friend too to observe you which things, if you were answering some of the questions that you just could not stop writing fast enough, and which ones really tripped you up where you're like, Kelsey, let's move it along. I'm done with this section. So really take some time to kind of reflect on some of these questions and, think about what maybe surprised you the most as you were going through the head and the heart mapping exercises when it comes to yourself. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to, be a change agent for other people. If you know there's other people who are struggling to figure some of these things out, identify and help them identify strengths that they might have or things that they're passionate about and help them tease that out a little bit. We can play a really strong advocacy role in helping other people to define their, career path and a career with purpose earlier on by supporting some of this synthesis, without people even knowing. I think it can be a very organic type of discussion or occurrence. So now we're moving along a little bit more in this design thinking process. And the next step is to think about defining a guiding persona. And I often like to think about this as a fearless mission statement. And so the next step would be to create one or actually multiple mission statements that provide some grounding for you moving forward about, the type of work that you want to do. In order to develop a fearless mission statement, there's three key questions that we really need to be asking ourselves: the what, the who, and the why. So I want to talk a little bit more about those. And I would ask Lasayo and Stephanie, if you want to contribute to any of this, feel free to jump in. So when I think about the what, it's the value that you intend to provide in the future. What are you good at, and what do you enjoy? The who is the people, organizations that you would like to work for or with. So Lasayo, I heard you loud and clear, and Stephanie, I heard you loud and clear on the who. I think both of you have very clearly defined who paths. So Lasayo, your work in the microfinance industry in Malawi, and Stephanie with helping adults find their purpose and continuing to be able to access resources to allow them to live their best life and an enriched life. For the rest of you, think about who those people or organizations are. And we're going to talk in a sec about developing a prototype. You may not always know what the what, who, or why is. And so there are opportunities to experiment and test that and learn a little bit more before we kind of chart out what our fearless mission statement might look like. And then the last thing that you want to think about asking is why. Why do this work when you can do a million other things? Why? What is your why? And you are all probably very familiar with Simon Sinek's Start With Why and his concentric circles. And I think that is a really important thing to continue to ask yourself and keep at the forefront of what you're thinking about doing with your career. The why ultimately describes the greater purpose of the work that you are hoping to do. It might describe who gets to benefit from the work or the energy that you're putting in, the greater problem, the problem that you hope to be able to solve someday, or the impact that might be achieved as a result of taking this particular path. I also recognize, though, that we are really dynamic people and individuals, and so we might have multiple what, who's, and whys. And I think it could be really dangerous to limit ourselves too early to one particular fearless mission statement. And so I want to encourage you, as you're thinking about the what, the who, and the why, that you challenge yourself to think about maybe 3 different scenarios. One that is top of mind. What comes to you today that, given everything you know right now, your life experience, things that continue to pull at you, what your strengths are, and if you continue down the path as it's been laid out for you, what might that fearless mission statement look like? The second fearless mission statement to create would be called a pivot sketch. This is if robots or aliens took over and you're no longer able to do what you originally thought you were going to do. What pivot might you make where you feel like you could also make some impact? And then the last one is the constraint-free one. If money and image and time and all the other constraints that we put on our lives didn't matter, and you knew that you would be loved and supported no matter what for any decision or career track or path that you decided to make, what would that fearless mission statement look like? And I think that's a really important one to keep wrestling with, because oftentimes what we do is place limitations on ourselves about what we want out of our career, or what we want our career track or path to look like. And so creating these 3 separate mission statements gives some bounds. It's what we know right now, we are imposing some level of constraint in the second one, and then we are opening things up in the third. And most likely your fearless mission statement and this persona that you are solving for now will be reflective somewhere in the middle of some of these. There will be some, grain of truth, an element of truth, the ultimate realization of truth, I guess, in some combination of these. The other thing I'll mention is that your fearless mission statement should be dynamic. It's something that is going to continue to change and shift as you learn more about the problem that you're interested in solving and as you yourself grow. I heard, Lasayo, you didn't know that you would ultimately be doing what you're doing after graduation when you started school, but you learned so much as you went through, and your fearless mission statement evolved and changed so that you were able to land in a spot that you feel like you are contributing in a really helpful and productive way, and that best leverages your passions. Stephanie, you went back to school because you evolved and learned things that you are really passionate about. And so your mission statement, I would guess, is very different from what it was when you were an undergraduate studying marketing. And so I think that's important to note, is that your mission and statement, your personal mission statement and your career can, will, and should change. And so this is something you want to keep going back to and evaluating as you learn more and as things around you change. We live in a really dynamic world, as we heard David Bornstein talk about. And you may read an article tomorrow, a solutions journalism article, that really pulls at you and shifts the way that you're thinking and what things you want to learn more about and the stories that you want to be able to tell. So we're moving along. We've gotten to the point where we've defined, or at least have a framework for thinking about what our mission statement might be, the what, the who, and the why, where we really want to make an impact. And now it's time to prototype. And I love prototyping because I think it is such a great way to test our assumptions and what we think and what we know. And I think this is out of everything on here, this is one of the most powerful ways with our careers and our career paths to think about and learn more about what we ultimately think we might want to do. So there's different ways to think about creating a prototype, a small test, if you will. You can have an active or a passive prototype. I put up on here a couple examples of what that could look like for you all. And a lot of times I'll encourage students to pick 5 to 7 of these or other ones that they come up with as ways to test if they think this is what they want to do. So as a student, you have a lot of opportunity to learn and grow without having to, pay as many bills. You have an opportunity to try out an internship, and that doesn't mean that's what you need to do for the rest of your career. I have students who do internships and they realize, I thought that was my dream job, role, organization, and I learned it's not. And I'm so glad I prototyped it and tried it, because I learned I am much better suited over here working at this organization, for example. So who can you reach out to? LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. Guest speakers. I am sure Jeff has some amazing guest speakers in his class. I know we bring a ton of amazing guest speakers to Marquette all the time. Reach out to them. You would be amazed at how few people actually reach out and follow up with guest speakers, for example. What a great person to talk to if you listen to someone and you're like, I want to be like you. I like your life. You have an interesting path. I want to learn a little bit more from you. Create an internship, volunteer. Stephanie, I heard you say volunteering, and I'd love to hear about how you kind of landed on that, and maybe if you had any takeaways from volunteering as a prototype that helped you really figure out that this might be what you wanted to do, and it encouraged you to take a leap of faith beyond volunteering.
Yeah, so I learned about the organization through my sister, actually. And I kind of always had it like in the back of my head, but I finally had a little bit of time, or I found time to commit to volunteering. And I went in thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to help somebody learn English. And it was just like a pretty basic idea of why I was doing it. But the more and more I did it, I became way more invested in the people that I was working with. And I think that's the main thing, the relationships through the classes that I was helping to tutor in and then lead really made me realize that I really love being in that type of space where I can really use my skills to go along this journey with somebody else that's trying to improve their lives.
Do you think that the volunteering made it less risky for you then to think about what's next and gave you a confidence boost or affirmed your decisions in any way?
Yeah, I definitely think it was very low risk because, again, like the time commitment was really low when it started. It was for a short period of time, but then doing it, I really realized more of what my skills were. Again, I was used to being kind of like a business environment, kind of like Lusail, he talked about being in the business environment. And I thought like I liked being in this business type of role, but then I realized that I went in trying to see if there was more to my life than what I was doing, and it reaffirmed that. And it really gave my life more purpose just with the simple initial volunteer position.
It's awesome. Lusail, do you have anything to add about how you maybe thought about doing some research and prototyping what this next career phase could look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've also done quite a few volunteering in my country before I came, and here I think for me, working with the organization, one of the ways in which I chose to adapt the organization is because I like the way they were doing the work, and the local organization, just local people from local college, and the students decided to come together. I think the oldest person in the organization is about 30 years old, so it's fairly young group of 10 young people, and they were just passionate about this. And even the loans that they were giving out in the beginning, it was their own money. So for me, just coming up against them and be like talking to them and just learning from them really made me curious to see like, okay, how can I help these guys? You know, what can I use my skills to be able to do this? And it enabled me to like partner with them. So when I took over as the president of Project Malawi, that's when I was like, you know what, I think we should be fundraising for these guys, because I feel like with our effort and their effort, we can increase their work and maximize their impact. So it was almost like we're like volunteering to fundraise for them. And in the process, I was learning more and more about the organization, and I was getting deeper and deeper into the organization because I was presenting their work here and speaking about it to different people. So I had to learn more, and there's just more. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it resonated with me and my passion. And you know, when they came up with the microfinance idea, that's when I was like, I think this definitely fits into the way of my thinking. But that constant contact that I had volunteering for them, like trying to fundraise and everything, really made me to like go deeper into their work, and affirm that I think this might be the right way for me to go.
Love it. Stephanie said something that I just want to reiterate. Prototyping is really low risk. So now is the time to design a prototype. And if you aren't sure what that should look like, seek out an advisor, a mentor, instructor. I am sure you are more than welcome to reach out to Jeff or I and talk more about, you know, on this list or other ideas that you might have, how could you design a prototype that allows you to test out what might make sense? I have a lot of students who launch social enterprises when they are students to say, I want to test and see if this is the right path for me. Some of them continue on with it. Some of them realize their gifts and talents are better leveraged within an existing organization that might also be working on the same thing. So what an opportunity that you have at your hands to be able to have the resources that are available to you as a student, with access to instructors, a .edu email address that feels less threatening, and more inviting to curiosity, I guess, from outside organizations. A lot of universities like Marquette will give you funding to prototype an idea that you might have. So seek out some of those resources and design a way to test what you think your purpose or a career with purpose might look like for you, because that will set you up on a much better path. And I think this is, prototyping is a space where you have a lot of agency if you're willing to think through and design what a low fidelity, low risk prototype might look like. I want to give you another tool. We're running out of time, so I'm almost done here. If all of the things that we said today are not necessarily resonating with you and you're not sure about what fearless mission statement might look like yet, one of my favorite tools, I should say, to go about designing and helping you think through how you might create a prototype or what it might look like is to do what is called mind mapping. Get out a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and put your what, your who, or your why right in the middle. What is that thing that you really care the most about? And then take about 2 to 3 minutes thinking of everything that might relate to it in adjacent, write it out adjacent to where your middle circle is, and start brainstorming out from there. So this example that we have on the screen right now is, the thing someone really cares about is being outdoors, and have all of these different things on this piece of paper then that relate to being outdoors, things that just immediately come to mind. If it comes to mind, write it down. This is not an exercise in perfection or quality. This is an exercise in the quantity of things that you can get down within a few minutes. Then pick 3, 4 random ones, circle them, and see if you can create a mashup of how those things might go together. You can pick all different combinations and start to think about what might resonate. I've had people do this and come up with that they want to open a sustainable wine bar that uses local cheeses and produce. And there's also a book section. So and I know someone that did this and is now trying to work on figuring out how that comes to life. So this is a great way to, again, kind of mash up the things that are in your heart in a free-flowing format and exercise where you can circle things and design then what could a potential prototype look like, and then figure out a way that you could test it from there. Your main job in this part of the design thinking process is to think about experimentation. Experiment with as many different ideas as possible. That will be what will get you to having a more flushed out and refined fearless mission statement that can help serve as a guiding principle in the life and the career that you want to create. And then, so this kind of wraps up our design thinking process. You will see this used at a lot of different organizations to solve a lot of different problems. I want you to continue to think about how you could use principles that we talked about today and some of the tools that we talked about today to think about designing what you ultimately want to get out of your life. And then the other really important thing to remember is that this is iterative. It's never finished. You might constantly be going back to refining your guiding persona and mission statement. You might constantly be thinking of new prototypes that you could try, rather than live in a space of fear or despair about work being hard or miserable. Think about how you can design an experiment to test out what you think you might want to do, or how your heart and head could be better leveraged in the future. Oftentimes, I think we're taught at a young age that you are either creative or you're not. We also think designers are graphically inclined and artistic, and we need to really bust that myth and that notion and rethink and reframe this idea that we can all be designers and we all have the ability to design our own career and career paths. And what we start out as in year one does not need to be what we ultimately end up doing for the rest of our lives. We can continue to create prototypes and experiments to refine what that might look like. So in true designer and creative mentality, we believe that you all have the ability to create something new in your career. learn about yourself by thinking more about these head questions, heart questions, talk to people, be curious, as David said, build and create experiments and test your way moving forward. Your life is worthy of a really great design, and it is your job to continue to tell, create, and design that story. And we're excited to see where that takes you. If you guys have any questions, we are happy to talk afterwards. I want to make sure that we wrap up so that you can figure out what session you want to go jump into next. So, I think we'll post those in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to go back to warp.org/positive change to read the descriptions and select a session for the next go around. I want to thank Lasayo, Jeff, and Stephanie for their fantastic contributions and insights and sharing their personal experiences with us today. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Lasayo.